with that, I'd like to call this meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission on October 19th to order at 7:30. I did get the date right, didn't I? 19th? All
Yep.
right, good. All right. I have received no public comment and don't see anyone here. So we'll
Okay.
jump quickly to agenda item number 2, which is a recap of the Woodbridge Like Me Day that we had a table. Valerie and Paul were there as well as myself, and either of you have any comments on your experience or the people that came by and what they were interested in? And
Well, Paul and I had been talking, and it was nice that people outside of Woodbridge really appreciated the Woodbridge trails, and saw it as a regional thing that we could all benefit from rather than just Woodbridge. And we spoke to a young man, I believe he was from California, and he really enjoyed the use of the trails, and actually had a running club that used the Woodbridge Trail. So that was really nice to hear that they did see it has a benefit to the overall
Yeah.
region. So.
And he lived in New Haven, and he made the comment that he saw is that it is a kind of regional asset,
yes,
that the open space in Woodbridge that New Haven doesn't have is something that isn't that far away for them, for residents in New Haven, and it's accessible.
right, right. That's great. I know that's a goal of SCROG, to promote regional resources, regional open space resources, and that was part of our effort in trying to get that piece down.
Yeah, especially he
on
mentioned
merit.
the fact that New Haven doesn't have that much open space relative to Woodbridge, that
Yeah,
it's, it's a great resource for people in New Haven.
yeah, wonderful. And we do have connections, as you remember from the Greenway, to at least 5 surrounding communities, maybe 6. I have to go back and count that again, but which is nice. Wonderful. Anything else?
There were a number of people that stopped by that were interested to know about the Greenway, and they lived near parts of it but didn't realize it went all the way around town. So
Yeah,
there were people in town that didn't know as much as that fellow from New Haven did.
yeah.
Thank you guys for being there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a good experience. Just to build on what you said, a number of people, I had the same experience, and the map helped in showing the visualization of how it's mostly a circle at one part of the Greenway. So that was great. The part I don't know what the right word is. I was maybe not surprised, but it was new thought to me, and it was how much people who were new to town appreciated us being there, and they seemed to be the people I talked to got the most out of stopping by, because they were not as aware of some of the open space and not aware of the accessibility of it that the Greenway provides, and so they were very engaged and wanted and signed up. A few of them for the trail cleanup days, because they knew they were getting something out of it, and I think they were willing right there to get something back. So they used the QR code, and they went right and signed up. So that's good. We had 4, 5, 6 new signups for that, the cleanup, and but you could see the appreciation of the open space and the building of awareness, and that's what we were doing. So
And-
yeah.
And somebody, I believe, did mention the maps at the library, didn't they? That they were
They
glad
did, yeah.
that they were there.
They were
Yeah,
They
they
have been-
mentioned that.
Yeah, they did mention that they
Really
had seen them
taking
there at the library.
advantage of them there. Although it's interesting, I noticed it's slowed down a great deal at this point.
Well, oh,
Very
sure.
busy in the
Cold.
spring and summer, but now they're not.
But cold
I could
weather.
hardly keep up with keeping them in there, but
Yeah,
now they're.
yeah, and we will still pursue that. And I don't think we lost any maps at the event, so people were you know, knowing that they're in the library, or town hall, or with the QR code, they took, some of the people took that too when I pointed that out to them, so, yeah, good all around. I forgot to go take pictures of people's table covers, so, turns, you know, I know the Friends have a nice one, they were close by, and you could see that one, that was nice. So, we'll look for examples, and perhaps, and thank you, Barbara, for volunteering your table cover. Your tablecloth.
Oh, also, it was nice being next to the next table, which was housing affordability.
Yeah,
So I had the opportunity to talk to her.
okay.
That was nice too, to kind of like network.
Yeah, I did too, a little bit beforehand, before we got going, not afterwards. Good. The next item is, I've been trying to make the approval of the minutes a little quicker when we can, when there doesn't need to be discussion. So we put it under consent agenda, and if no one has a need to talk about it, it's a quick disposition. But I added another item there tonight, and so that needs explanation. When before this year, when the municipal elections moved, we used to elect the first selectman, and the Board of Selectmen members, Board of Education, et cetera. We used to do that in May, and the people who, and that new board would then decide for the boards and commissions who to appoint, and those appointments would take effect on July 1st, and calendars for the year would be due at the end of the year, December usually. It could be November, but December. So each formed board or commission would have, how many months of that is that? 5-6 months to go through their process, whatever it was, to make sure to get agreement on their calendar. The board, those commissions would form. Now that we're in with our election in November, and the new first selectman not seated till January, they're not going to appoint, I guess, the boards and commissions formally until January 1st. So those commissions are commissioned, and our commission too, which could have new members. 3 or 4 of us have terms that are expiring. That board or commission won't come together until January. So my thought is, it'd be only fair to let the newly formed board, commission, the Conservation Commission in this case, be able to meet and just be the ones that ratify next year's calendar. And so the thought was, just let's extend for at least 2 months, January and February, on the same schedule that we currently have, and then let them, let that newly formed commission vote at that time for the rest of the year, and then probably for it doesn't, for next year it won't matter, but, but extend 12 months from then and do it on that type of cycle. I'm tempted even to say April as well, but if we get it done in January at the first meeting, that won't be a factor. There is a notice, and one of the other factors there is to be a regular meeting, the calendar has to be established. And I didn't look this up, but I think that calendar has to be noticed 45 days ahead of time. So that's why, meet in January. You wouldn't be in time to have a regular meeting for February. So that's why I said February, or January and February. So that's the other factor, the reason to do it. So do we need a discussion on that?
No, it sounds
That
like a good idea.
No.
Makes sense to everybody? Okay. So,
Do you need a motion?
well, yes, we need Here's the thing, if there is no discussion needed on the, and if there's no objection to the minutes or to extending our calendar at the same time, third Thursday at 7:30.
Can we
and,
make two different votes? Because I wasn't here for the calendar, so I would abstain from that one. I wasn't here on
you're-
last month's meeting.
You
Oh,
mean-
for the minutes.
You mean the
Yeah.
minutes?
Excuse me, you said, I think you misspoke to, and you said calendar, so.
Sorry, I
so-
wasn't here
that's-
for
yeah,
the
it's-
meeting.
Yes, we can certainly do that. So the items are separated, so we'll take them one at a time. For the minutes, consider minutes, any need for, if there's no objection or discussion needed in the minutes, we will adopt that by consent. That is done. For extending the calendar to meet, the Conservation Commission to meet on the third Thursday of March and February 2024 at 7:30 PM. There is
You
no.
mean January and February?
January and February. No, I meant February and March. January, we've already got scheduled.
Oh, I see, okay.
That's already on our current calendar. So there's no objection to extending regular meeting day and time to February, March, and so adopted. Thank you. Next up, some of our current initiatives. The, Barbara, anything need to be said on the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society?
Nothing in particular, other than I have reached out to Rebecca about design,
Okay.
but she hasn't gotten back to me really. I mean, I think there's no problem with it, but she's, we haven't talked any further.
The
than like-
problem
We
is,
haven't, there is no problem, other than we haven't talked any further about
Oh.
what it entails.
So this is
Yeah.
the historic points of interest along the Greenway?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of our board members is a graphic designer and so forth, and we thought in our meeting with Tim and some of our members that I should reach out to this board member to talk about designing the actual signs and so forth.
perhaps just a few sentences on current status would be in order. There's really two threads going on, or will go on in the future. One is there's a draft list of historical places that are near trails, near Greenway paths, and those are being reviewed by the members of this working group with some other folks who can comment and perhaps add to and refine those places. And the goal is for that to get done by the end of October-ish, or certainly before a historical society meeting that's slated sometime in November. Is that still true?
Fourth,
November 4th?
no, fourth Thursday,
4th?
the fourth Thursday,
Oh, all right, so there's more time than I thought.
which may be Thanksgiving, so it won't be then.
Okay. I knew the date was up in the air. I
But it
didn't
will be
really-
late November.
Okay. So,
And by the way, if any one of the members here would like to see that list and
yeah.
possibly add to it, I
I,
didn't bring it with me tonight, but I
we
certainly can send
certainly
it out.
want to do that. I thought it might be appropriate to get that review done by this next tier of people in town who know the historical sites, and let it be mostly complete before we brought it in here, because we are, well, let me hold that thought for a second. So that's one thread. The second thread is if we have historical markers, then we need to design what they look like. And as Barbara mentioned, since there's somebody on the board that has a background in graphic design, I'm going to try to elicit that person to help with that design. And then also that same person supports the website, so the information, once it's written, has to be put someplace, to be put on the website, so the design of the website is in play also. So those are the two threads that are, the second one just starting to go on. Now that because these markers are going to go into our open space, it's appropriate that that design, we're involved in the design. You know, the commission as a whole, not just the working group, so we'll certainly be coming back with that. And with a little more, I struggle for the words, a little more finalized draft, doesn't quite make sense, but you know, when the draft is a little more developed, we'll bring that to everybody and let, you know, it's just not quite there yet. That, all that sound right, Barbara?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And is there, the other item under this is the tree initiative. I'm,
Want to give that update?
About the,
The tree regulation.
if it's needed, I mean, again, you know, we don't have to just talk to Phil because
We
the
don't have a
item's
lot of-
here.
we
we
don't
don't
have a
have
lot
a
to
lot of
report.
Yeah,
update.
yeah.
We have acquired the portion of the local ordinances that refer to what we're interested in. And I learned, very surprisingly, that they are redoing this ordinance. And so hopefully we'll be able to actually get some suggestions in there.
Well, perhaps we would redefine redoing. I did make comment last meeting that I knew they were cleaning them up,
Well,
making sure they had internal integrity. The intent, I did not understand, and I can be corrected for sure, was not to redo or add or change anything at this time, except if it needed to be changed to tie it together with other parts of the references in the document. So that was my understanding. I didn't.
that's not exactly as I heard it, but
Yeah.
it may be
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
I don't- But I think it is a time to get suggestions into them. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah. I had sent over a request to see if I could get a copy of what was sent to you all, just on the planning and zoning regs.
I can scan it and email it
Yeah.
to you.
Okay. Oh, it's just paper you got? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
Barbara got
on
it,
the,
actually.
it's on the website.
Okay.
That's where I got
If
it
it's
from.
the one that's published, then I can get it.
Yeah,
I thought perhaps you had, were sent the draft of the
No.
cleaned up one.
no,
Okay.
No.
Then I don't
I'm happy
need-
to
I
scan
need-
it and send it to
I
you.
don't,
if
no,
you'd
I
like.
don't need it, Paula, because I do
Okay.
have access to that.
What
I
town
ju-
is it for?
For Woodbridge, so
For
it's the
it's the,
zoning regulations, the portions that pertain to landscape. Barbara got a copy of it to distribute to us because the ones on the website didn't seem to be complete, so.
That's great.
Well, that's an interesting comment. I'd forgotten that. Are they, the ones you got more complete than what's on the website?
I don't particularly see that they are, but
Okay, okay.
again, I haven't,
Then, yeah, I don't need it then. I was looking for the updated. Is there, well, let me ask you this. When do you think you'll need substantial time for the commission to have a discussion within the commission?
I can get back to you before our next meeting to see whether that would make sense.
Okay,
We
yeah,
have to meet, we have to go through these and then meet also.
okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so do let me know for purposes of planning. Good.
Hello.
Hello. Good, good. We are just, have finished up item number 4, the Woodbridge Conservation Commission initiatives. we will move on to item number 5. Any comments on the items of interest that we've been following?
I have a brief update in the pollinator pathway, what I've learned about the grants and such. So I might have said something about this the last meeting also, but it seems as though the planting pollinators on the country club property, we talked about a couple times, the scope of that would be within the requirements for the NRCS grants. And I talked to the NRCS person, and she explained to me, what the application would have to include, who would have to be involved. The grant would be given to a third-party organization, not the town of Woodbridge.
Right.
And the land trust has interest in being that third-party organization. And so that's one step forward on that. They have interest. We have to, or I was going to reach out to, I was going to talk to Joy about this too, is some of the youth groups within town that might consider this a project, like the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the 4-H group. So I reached out to David Lober, and I haven't heard back from him yet to see, because I know he's been involved in the Boy Scouts in the past. Maybe he could
Okay.
point me in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I know there's a troop at the Assumption Church, there's
Yes.
a troop at the Congregational Church, and there's
Right.
a troop at B'nai Jacobs.
Yep.
And, if we got interest from all of them, the grants aren't huge, and it wouldn't be that
Mhm.
great of a task. We could,
Right.
frankly, get a grant for an acre for each one of them. So we could do 4 acres if we got everybody, even the 4-H group involved. The scope of that is a little fluid, just to see,
Okay.
which youth groups would be interested in it. The garden club would be interested in supervising and consulting on the planting of it. So if we got one of these youth groups involved, they would, be able to provide some input in terms of how big the hole should be, what kind of amendments should be planted. Maybe they might even have some suggestions on pollinators. The lady from NRCS had recommended that we consider bushes as opposed to trees or flowers, just because of the description of the topography
Yep.
and the people involved in probably planting it. That might be the most hardy approach.
And ongoing maintenance is easier probably with
Exactly.
bushes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also I described to her where the pollinators would be planted. It would be between the wooded area and the grass areas to soften those, as was recommended in the Audubon study. So that's what I have to report on so far. Again, my next step would be to reach out and see if we can find some youth organizations that would be interested in it. And since Joy's here now, maybe you'd ask her if her 4-H group might have some interest in it.
So I would say that, I think I mentioned this before when we brought this up, that, obviously I think we would need permission from the town to even do it, so we don't even have that permission.
No.
I think.
No.
Right. Yeah, so my thought
So-
was we would
We-
kind of package it up
Yeah.
in terms of what our proposal was if we got,
Give them the idea of go to the Board of Selectmen and say, this is what we're proposing.
this is
Yeah.
what
Could
we're
happen.
suggesting. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
what could happen. So for
Mhm.
instance, the land trust would be willing to provide the matching funds and be the entity responsible for it, to manage it.
Mhm.
They would get a license agreement with the town that would have to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. We could talk about the youth groups that were interested in participating in it. We could
Mhm.
talk about the garden club being interested in supervising and consulting on it. And so before we would go to the Board of Selectmen, we'd have kind of like a package put together that, it would be something they could approve, as opposed to, hey, this just is an idea we thought of.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried to build over time information about contacts in the Boy Scout troops. And the Girl Scout troop, I believe, is out of B'nai Jacob. I'm not as knowledgeable in that, it just hasn't, but I
Okay.
believe that's the same, well, I know who, I know, I have a contact at the Girl Scout troop, I believe they're out of B'nai Jacob. I don't know of any other ones besides the one, there may be. But-
Okay.
So I have at least those contacts, names, some emails.
I
So-
have contacts for you as well,
Yeah,
for Boy Scouts
yeah,
and,
yeah.
obviously
Which
4-H.
troops do you,
So the troops, I don't know their numbers, but
Yeah.
I know,
There's assumptions.
63 is Assumption,
60, right.
40 something is B'nai Jacobs, I don't know what the other number is.
so they're with the, is it First Congregation Church?
There's
One
another,
over here.
yeah.
So there's a girls Boy Scout troop,
Mhm.
in Reen Van Tonder, who's also
Yeah,
my
that's-
partner
That's the
on the
partner.
4-H as well.
And that's out of the congregational?
I believe so.
Oh, then I'm misinformed.
But
or
I'm not sure. So
Misunderstood.
girls, but they're not Girl Scouts. They're Boy Scouts for girls.
Okay,
It's the
And
New
they're
World.
older.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, with all these youth
Yeah.
groups, the leadership is always changing because parents usually
Sure,
are
they-
involved with their
they-
kid.
they
and
age
then
out.
they-
Yep.
Exactly. So, so that's just, one of those things to think about that, when we involve youth groups doing
Yeah.
these projects, that it's an always evolving situation.
yeah,
But if there was, I think, the way to go about the pollinator pathway, period, for Woodbridge should be a town-wide initiative where you don't have these siloed groups, as I had mentioned before in a previous meeting. You actually have a vision of what the pollinator pathway is for the town of Woodbridge and at Macero Farms, at the country club, at any number of places, and that there's there's a logic to how we're going about this, and we would be able to get bigger grants as a result for that. And then it would also be something that these youth organizations could click into more easily, because going with, the Land Trust or the Garden Club of Woodbridge, or, everyone's kind of off doing their own thing, but we all have in common is that we really care about pollinators and we want to do something great, but more hands, less work, right? So,
so it sounds like we need an identified agenda item to talk about overall approach and,
but maybe not just even on the country club, but like conservation land we
Well-
have that we know we could
Right,
do
other-
things
other-
on the
if it's-
trails or whatever, we
Yeah.
could be doing things if it was an initiative for the town, which seems like it fits with conservation quite well.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with any of it, but what Joy have said, it just as a history of it, the idea came to mind because the Audubon
Yeah.
study had recommended that we look at that, and I just thought, when
Yeah.
I read it, I thought, that sounds like something that would be right up the Conservation Commission's
Yeah.
alley, and that we could help facilitate it.
Yeah.
Not that we would necessarily be the organization responsible for it or anything, but we could kind of put it together, put the groups together, and help them make it
Yeah,
happen.
we can
Yeah.
be,
It-
and both, I think both things
Yeah.
can be done.
I mean,
Probably. We have to think about how that happens, how it
As
fits
we
together.
talk about
I'll
it-
recognize, excuse me, Val first, I think she was
Sorry.
Well, I'm
first to the
sorry.
table.
No, I think they're both correct, but I think
Yeah.
Paul was looking at a starting point
Yeah.
to get it started. I'm getting acclimated to this whole concept of pollinated pathways. I didn't know anything about it prior to Joy and Paul discussing it prior. And now when I ride around, I'm looking at it. So I do think you have to have a starting point and then grow from there. It doesn't have to be everything at once. It could just be, let's start like a seed and let it nurture and grow. And maybe this is something that what Paul has suggested, where we just But he's also talking about getting a grant and getting some money and just starting small and then seeing where it goes. And I think it's gonna catch on. But sometimes you don't wanna just start out big. Just start small, let it grow. Let's see other people gravitate towards it.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind. The grants are not huge. It's only $700 per acre. So, you know, if one troop did, or one
Yeah.
Eagle Scout project, or the 4-H group did 1 acre, maybe we could have another group do another acre, and maybe we do 3 or 4 acres, or maybe we start off and we only do 1, you know, depending on the interests we have. But
Okay.
I don't think it would be prudent to sign up for a large-scale project, our first one. Why don't we just see what it takes to get it organized, get it started, and then at that point, if we're successful, we can go to phase 2, and maybe next year do, instead of 2 or 3 acres, maybe we do 4 or 5 or something greater. I mean, it'll take some energy to put it together, so I don't wanna bite off more than we can chew.
Barbara, you wanted to comment?
Essentially, I would say the same thing, that I mean, I like the idea that Joy's talking about an overall
Yeah.
thing, but I think that Paul's project is a pilot project.
Yeah.
You know, we can find out what we're doing, or what needs to be done, or
Yeah.
what can be done, or whatever, and then possibly expand into
Yeah.
an overall town project.
Yeah, and I think we just should understand maybe the larger effort, so we know how that fits in. So we'll put time on the agenda to talk about primarily what a larger town initiative would look like, just to understand that.
I'm a little
Sarah-
concerned about that, actually. I'd like to make sure we get the pilot project off the ground before we start to think of the bigger project, because I think it could dissipate our effectiveness. And I think we have enough difficulty doing projects that I'd like to make sure that this one really happens, especially if there's gonna be a change of the guard and different people. So I'd like to wait till the next group comes in before we create that vision, because, you know, lots of us are up for.
Yeah, this could be this could be a whole new team here, yeah.
Well, not,
Couple of
well, it
months.
could be all new,
Yeah.
that's true, but, you know, usually not, but at least partially new. And this is the dilemma that faces us as we close out the year, is, you know, yes, new commission should have large voice in what happens going forward, but do we want to stop everything we do
No, I
because
don't think we wanna
it's going to
stop.
change? So,
I think we just wanna make sure that we have quite a few steps to even make this one happen. This is nowhere near
Right.
launching,
Absolutely.
so.
It'll
Right.
carry over into the new.
yeah, both will carry over.
Right.
So do we start at least to have a discussion around, to understand what Joy's thinking and
You know,
flesh it out a little
like
bit?
At Macero Farm, they're
Yeah.
already doing that, so you can actually go and see a physical example of what, now that's also a farm, right? But it's the forest and the pollinator pathway, very intentional plantings have happened on that property.
Right,
Is proper land management. So what they were speaking of in that Audubon study was that, you know, you have this land, you should be properly managing the land, because that would be the proper
Yep.
stewarding of that land. But, you know, you could go, like I said, to Macero, which is, you know, has a conservation easement of sorts as well, right? And see that in practice now, he's actually just planting new trees and a whole nother like windbreak of trees and shrubs that are native plantings. So just to give some examples, but the big trees and bigger shrubs, as you gardeners know, that's not work for kids per se either. That's, you know, that's a heavier equipment, you know, so depending on what the jobs are, and I haven't been to the country club recently just to know the exact spots or exact acreage areas we were
Yeah.
talking about, but it's pretty messy over there, you know, that's not kid work per se either, you know, so.
That's why she
We're-
recommended, the lady from NRCS recommended the bushes, given where they were gonna be planted and who I described to her would probably do the planting. she thought that would be a good fit. And we could bounce that off the garden club and see what they think too.
We're,
But-
we're starting to go down into the weeds of
I think
a
so too.
planning.
Literally.
So, yes. Well, hopefully it won't be weeds. But before we close on this, Sharon, I just wanted to make sure I understood your point. Are you suggesting that we,
Wait till January, I mean, we're not gonna plant anything or do anything, things are
no,
dormant.
but.
So why don't
but
we wait till January or February to
to
create
even
the bigger
discuss it?
picture? No, I think we should continue with the pilot project, full steam ahead and get that all organized. But for the bigger project, I
Okay.
think we should get a sense of how complicated and what kind of resources we need and stuff, and then kind of
What's the
extend.
grant process, how long would
Yeah,
that
I-
even take,
I
you
mean,
know?
that's what a pilot project's all about.
Yeah.
See how
Right.
it works,
Yeah.
and then you.
And then
But-
this,
but-
You sort of
then
put a
next year
timeline
might,
together.
if we did it again, it might be easier.
Well, timeline for plantings, for instance, if we did spend these last couple months putting something together and could get in front of the Board of Selectmen with a proposal, they might just say, well, we're not doing this right now because it doesn't make sense until we have the new people, who knows? But if we could get in front of them, say January, and the grant lined up where you could get the money fairly quickly, this would be a great springtime, setup.
Yeah.
That's what I was
I-
thinking too. The timing, would probably, if we get started,
But
get people
I-
organized.
I just would suggest that if you get it in front of the Board of Selectmen, the one pilot project, as you're calling it, it may, but I would expect they'd have questions of how it fits into the larger effort of the town that we've talked about. And we've already communicated that. That we're looking at how the pollinator pathways should be deployed in town. So I think we almost have to have that discussion, at least an initial discussion, so we have some thoughts on that.
I'm not
Go
opposed
with
to
it.
discussing it, I just don't wanna be bogged down with
Well, Sharon,
creating a master
Sure.
plan for the whole town.
And I-
Never getting anything done.
Yeah, I've been-
Val?
In addition to the grant, we're in a great environment here in New Haven and Connecticut. And at one point, we had someone, I think he was getting his master's in some type of endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
Would
Right.
it be possible for, in addition to getting the money, to have some type of consultant, maybe a grad student, hopefully free, and that could be part of this project that can kind of help us steer us in the right, because I have personally no knowledge. I don't know if the garden club does, but would that be possible as part of this pilot program to
Sure.
put that
We
out
could-
there, so we could have maybe a consultant that has maybe superior knowledge about this topic, and that we can kind of like, when you have a consultant, we can avoid a lot of pitfalls and
Yep.
problems and mistakes. Not that they're,
Good-
that's
good
what
points.
a consultant often can.
I think you're referring to the person from UNH, the graduate student.
He was just an example, but there may
Yeah,
be
you're
somebody
right.
else from Yale Forestry or some,
Right.
that possibly would like to be part of this, and that we could be a win-win situation for them and for us, and they can kind of steer us, and that could be part of this pilot program, in addition to the money, so now we have knowledge, skills, expertise, and we have the money, and that can kind of save, I think, a lot of
That's a great
maybe
idea.
costly mistakes and
Sure.
just wasted
Sure.
time.
And that's why we want to have this dedicated discussion, so we can generate the other ideas. And Paul, I was just, Sharon said we perhaps should defer that till after the year, and I think we need to have it in concert and parallel, so, and it sounds like, you're not opposed to having it, so,
As long as we can move forward with the pilot
Yeah,
program.
yeah, I think
that's
it's-
fine.
it's
We
a-
can
it's
have a
a-
broader
it's
discussion
to
of
give it context.
how that might
Yeah.
fit in, but,
So we'll put some time on next time to specifically talk about that.
so if you think of it, Tim, in the next few days, if you could just reach out to me and send me an email with the contact information for
Some of the Boy Scouts?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
I can reach out to Father Glenn and find out who it is from the Assumption Church, but
Yeah.
I don't know the people of B'nai Jacob.
You know the people from Congregational Church?
Uh,
That's Dick Versilius.
okay, Richard Facilius, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's who I thought it was,
Okay.
yeah. Is he still involved in it?
Believe so.
He is, okay.
Any other comments on the items of interest? Or, just updates if needed? All right, I have one, on the Audubon assessment, the state forestry department will come and do the assessment. The assessment, though their recommendation and now the scheduling is that they will do it in the spring once growth starts. So it's April-ish type of probably.
When the birds fly back north.
Excuse me?
Said when the birds fly
Yeah,
back north.
yeah, exactly. Exactly, because I think there will be both a sort of forestry view and their plan is to have a wildlife biologist also. So,
Great.
it's a combination. So we'll just track that into the spring. Member comments. I will start here. And then open it up. I had sent out an invitation from the Housing Committee, an invitation for a presentation on October 30th. And I wanted to encourage all of you to attend that, if at all possible, and other future education opportunities we have on housing. Being one of the land use agencies in town, I think it's incumbent upon us to understand the housing needs in the town and to be able to weigh in on, what parcels are not suitable for housing, what parcels are suitable for housing.
I
I
don't
think
think
it's
it's-
incumbent that we get educated and just as much as we can, so that we can properly participate in that town discussion as it goes forward and and I'm sure it will through next year. So with that, I will open it up to other members for comment. I think, Paul, you I think had a comment.
Yeah, so I just to start with, I think using town-owned property for a housing development is entirely ridiculous. And it's not the town's responsibility. It's not a state law that requires it. Financially, it is not smart for the town to develop housing on its property. And we've gone through some of the discussion of the financial impacts of it. Doesn't make sense from a financial perspective, doesn't make sense from a conservation perspective. The Affordable Housing Statute 830G has been in existence for 30 years. If a developer wants to build an affordable housing development, they can do it in Woodbridge today. They could have done it 30 years ago. They could have done it any time in between. The whole concept of looking at the town's open space to use for housing is it's just completely ridiculous. I'm not sure. I guess I do know who some of the people who think that's a good idea is, but it's fuzzy logic. It doesn't make sense from a financial perspective. It doesn't make sense from a conservation perspective, and it's not the town's responsibility to provide a developer land. If a developer wants to develop something in Woodbridge, they can buy a piece of land and they could develop it. If they wanted to develop affordable housing anywhere in the town, they have absolutely no restriction whatsoever from the town of Woodbridge. There's nothing the town of Woodbridge could do, say, or act that could stop if a developer wanted to build affordable housing. So the whole concept of us spending time to identify land that's open space that could be used for housing is just a complete waste of time, and it's a waste of energy. It's not our responsibility, it's not our charter, and frankly, it's misplaced for the town to even consider using town-owned open space for housing. If somebody wanted to develop housing in Woodbridge, it's a business venture that there is a state statute that permits them to do it and has permitted them to do it whenever they wanted to for the last 30 years. And, you know, this whole concept that, I don't know if these people think the town of Woodbridge is gonna give land to a developer to build housing. You know, one nice thing about Woodbridge is we don't have urban sprawl. And, you know, if the town starts giving up open space to build housing, we're gonna be in a situation where it's not gonna be an attractive place to live because it's gonna have urban sprawl. Again, it's not the charter of the Conservation Commission, and I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in attending such a meeting where somebody is gonna tell me black is green and red is orange, and, you know, something that just absolutely doesn't make sense. It's a total waste of time. So, I guess,
I concur with what you
Hold-
say,
hold-
Paul,
hold on,
because I'm gonna
please, Sharon,
speak.
till I
No,
recognize
no,
you.
I'm gonna go. I
Just
wanna
hold-
follow what Paul says,
Well,
because I'm emphasizing it.
The chair
What
will
I'd like to
recognize
say-
you when I'm ready.
so I'm not criticizing you,
Um,
Tim, I just don't think it's what we should be spending
I
our
don't
time
take
on.
it any criticism, it's a comment on housing in the town. Do any other members have comments
Yes,
on any subject before we move on?
no, I
Yes.
wanna comment on this, right?
You can
Okay.
comment.
Because I think it's really key that we keep conservation as our utmost thing, and just in the way you've been framing that, you're saying what land is possible so that they can have it to use. And I agree with Paul, that's not our job. That's, I mean, that's something, we're trying to protect the land, that's our job. It's not to try to figure out how we can put housing on land.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that it won't be done and we won't have comments on it, but to encourage it, I think is against what we're hoping to have happen.
Anybody else have comments before we?
I think it's
Move on.
important to stay informed, because I do think that there's, I mean, we're being sued as a town, so, for affordable housing. So I think we need to be knowledgeable about that. I also think that, and I know it's contentious, and I'm not trying to pick a fight here, but when you're talking about the country club, which we know is 155 acres, and I know we want to conserve it, but I do think that 155 acres is a lot of land, and we could do some conserving there, but we could also, you know, with that in mind, shape what else it could be used for if there were housing there, or if there was something else there, so that we could have it not taint what we're trying to accomplish on our conservation efforts. And that's true about any big parcel in town, or anywhere where we're working with our conservation hats, you know, to be aware of what the town is also facing, or what decisions might be coming with whether it's zoning board or affordable housing or any of these other hot topics, that we could weigh in with that and be able to say, hey, we appreciate that you're gonna go ahead and do this anyway, but could you also, you know, do something so that we're doing right by.
Well, I'm sure if something comes before us, we'll try to create a compromise that could work the best for everyone in the town. I just don't think it's our role to help further the destruction of land if that isn't.
Well, it's
We're-
just
that's not
Sharon,
our charter.
hold on, Troy.
aggressive way, though.
And Sharon, I'll ask you again, during the comment, our comments here, please wait until I recognize the speaker.
I'd like to make a
So,
comment.
so, and
Have-
You know,
we've
I'm
never
not-
done that
this is-
before.
this is not a topic an agenda item for us. We're not gonna have a full-blown discussion on housing right now. If there's a
No,
desire
we're
to do
having a
that,
discussion
we can
on
add that to the,
conservation.
we can add it to the agenda at another meeting. Val, Barbara, you haven't had a chance to comment. Would you like any further comment on this or any other topic?
I just have one quick comment to make is,
Okay, Paul.
the town of Woodbridge has a lot of challenges to run the things it has on its plate currently.
Yep.
It is not capable of becoming a developer. It is not the government's responsibility, it's not the town of Woodbridge's responsibility to be a developer. Again, if a developer wanted to do a development, there's nothing in the world that's stopping it, and nothing has stopped it in the last 30 years. So if somebody wants to do it, it will happen. But the town of Woodbridge is not capable with, the way the town is managed, it's just beyond their capability to do something that's completely out of their scope of responsibility and frankly out of their capability.
I will make a final comment, really, perhaps I didn't communicate all that I wished to communicate about this item. It's my belief that over the next months, year, maybe years, there'll be a conversation about which parcels of land in town are suitable for housing. Not any certain one parcel, certainly that will be discussed and we know what it is, but not all town parcels, but town parcels that are not currently restricted will be looked at in this light. And I believe that we as commission members, in order to take the conservation perspective and be able to participate in those conversations and to communicate the need for conservation for all or part of those parcels, we need to be understanding of the drivers of what's driving the housing necessity in town or the perceived necessity in town. And we should be building relationships with the people who have those thrusts as their main concern. And if we don't do that, our ability to communicate and to affect the conservation charge that we have will be more limited. So for that reason, I think it's good to learn, continue to learn, educate ourselves, and be engaged with those people. So with that, we will move on to our work session. Sharon, could I ask you a favor as I get this started up and just hit the lights for me there?
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, and just need to. Let's see. And that'll take a second to ramp up.
I wasn't here last time. What is our intention to, and how much do we wanna get done?
We'll go to 9:30 at the latest. We will be reviewing the set of properties that Barbara had taken a look at in terms of from the PA 490 list. I I will then move on to the town properties. That answer the question, Sharon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before I start, and I bring this up for a reason, I'll refer to it in just a second. You'll probably go to sleep, but we'll try to keep on top of that. I had previously sort of set a goal for us to get through all this classification and the open space plan. But in sort of reflecting on the efforts that we've made so far, which have been good ones, I mean, there's nothing, looking down on the efforts, but I reflected on it and I came to two conclusions. The first conclusion was it was unrealistic expectation to try to get this done by the end of the year. And we just won't get there. And while the goal of that was to do it with the commission that was currently constituted, I just don't think we can. And I think I sort of reflected that in the, and I will reflect that in the construction of the agendas going forward. So we'll leave the work sessions to the end and plug away and get as much done at the end of the meetings as we can. And probably trying to limit the meetings till 9:30, as we sort of had developed a habit of doing earlier in the year. And you were lucky, we went long last time. And I think going long last time, that was my second kind of conclusion when I looked back at what we were doing. I started to see some inconsistencies in what we were doing, particularly around when we started looking at developed properties, developed houses, or properties that had primarily houses on them, maybe some other buildings. And we were very inconsistent about what was a sizable acreage, or, and the reasons not to include if there were smaller acreage. And, I think over time, as we take what we do, and other people look at it, we have to be sure that we can explain the decisions we made. And we have to be, I think consistency helps with that, but it's the consistent application of a set of criteria. And it strikes me that, the sort of the finger in the air sense of it maybe is not going to be, strong enough for any one of you to stand up and have a discussion with someone about why we made that decision. So I thought perhaps tonight, before we even started with Barbara's, we should have a little discussion about what's sizable acreage for properties. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, 'cause towards the end, it felt like we were getting a little off
Yeah.
the rails on
Yeah.
sizes, and I was confused,
Yeah.
I know, for sure.
And I think we may have to go revisit that a little bit. I'm not going to do that now, or
Tim, I didn't hear your last statement. I didn't understand what you said.
well, I believe, if I recall what it was, that out of this efforts, we're going to construct this list. And that list, at some point in the future, is going to be publicly available. And people may ask questions of why did you include this property, but not my property? And I want to make sure, Barbara, if someone asks you that, that you're prepared to say, well, this is the criteria we applied, and, and your property doesn't fit into that criteria. That was,
Uniformity in thought.
excuse me?
Uniformity in thought.
Yes. Yes, I was using consistency, but yes. Right. So, You know, nothing
But
work.
wouldn't, I guess this could be part of it, but wouldn't location, proximity to some other resource, the actual beauty of it, the trees, I mean,
Yeah.
land
It-
is a lot of an, it's not just criteria, it's got a lot of subtlety, like it had a hill in it, it had a dale, it has
Yeah.
a vernal pool. I mean, so I don't know that we can say, okay, it was 5 acres and that's 5 acres. I think some land is just, has a lot more biodiversity and is a lot more valuable.
Yeah, and I don't think on those are as much concern, but, well, you try to get as much subjectivity out as you can, but we got to the point last time where we were talking about parcels that beyond their buildable lots, zoning, minimum acreage, their excess acreage was not that great. There was no redeemable features, but we ended up, and when I looked through all the decisions we made, there was great variability in when we said, we're kind of, you know, is that enough acreage just to say, yeah, it's big enough to be open space, when it was sort of sitting by itself. And so, yeah, you know, if something is a wetland, you know, something is farmland soil, you know, when, yeah, there's a compelling reason to preserve that. And so some of the things you mentioned, it's got a historic structure and compelling reason to say it, but when it's just somebody's backyard, and yeah, it has some trees on it, but is it compelling? Because
There were a
know-
there's a
couple,
lot of people, a lot of single-family houses here that have wooded back yards, and so you know, they're probably not, don't fit our concept of really valuable open space that should be preserved. And I'd just like to see we get a little more precise on that.
I guess maybe unfortunately, but I have somewhat of a different point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I think that any open space is worth conserving. Any. And I know at the last meeting, we talked about a space that was in the, shall we say, in the center, for ease, in the center of maybe six houses surrounding it.
Yep.
And my strong feeling is that is very important to conserve, in the sense that it provides a space for pollinators and wildlife and so forth and so on within this compound of houses, and also provides a quote-unquote wild space for any members of the houses to enjoy. Otherwise, you know, anything that has a lot of buildings, you're gonna say, oh, well, you don't have to keep that property, but that is almost more important than anything. To keep the little like New York City has, all kinds of little oases all over the place. And that's the way I personally approach it, as needing to conserve as much as we possibly can of what's left. So,
And
I
when
think
it's someone's backyard,
I don't
It-
think it's most important. I don't think, in a sense, you fight for it, but it's certainly worthy of keeping, if you
Well,
can
it's
convince them
just
to keep it
more
as,
pervious surface, and it's more water drainage, and it's more, you know,
well,
less
yeah, there
stressors,
in
I mean,
it might
numerous-
not be a piece of property that we would proactively put on the top of our list of what we would like to try to pursue, but if it's open space, it's something ultimately we would want to conserve, but it might not be our priority of what we first go after or spend our efforts on. I think that's kind of what you're
That's-
saying.
yes.
but, yeah. And I think in this list, we're trying to get to those ones that are the most valuable open space in town.
Mhm.
We all, yeah, I can't disagree. If you get half an acre in someone's backyard, that's great for habitat. There's a lot of them. They're semi-connected and
Then it becomes a larger
includes
place.
the whole. It improves the whole. But there's a reality here that, most people, well, now they're allowed to put an accessory dwelling unit, but, it's not gonna be a development. If it's scaled is, in the zoning, it's already subdivided and there's a housing on it, it's, people aren't gonna try to wedge in some housing development. It's just not gonna happen. And those are the ones we're talking about in this,
It's happened in Milford, in a lot of places.
yeah.
It's true.
So, and to try to put something that's a little more, a little more descriptive, defines what's sizable acreage. Along with that, I think you do need to have the exceptions, what are the exceptions for that?
Right.
So-
Remember from our
so-
last meeting, there were a couple of properties, there was one on Center Road, there was one on North
Yeah.
Keys,
Yeah.
that essentially we were saying it's just basically somebody's backyard. So it wouldn't be higher on our list, but,
Yeah,
it would be better to see that land be open space. If somebody wanted to gift it to the land trust or the town or something, we'd certainly be interested in it, but it might not be a piece of property that we would spend a lot of time trying to get a grant to buy.
yes, and, the exceptions I'm thinking about, if it's a historic farm, I just, because when we went through the properties you looked at, you pointed out a couple I wasn't aware of, then that, even if it's smaller, that's probably, that's worth preserving, because that's an exception if we were to come up with size. I'll show you one other thing that came across to me today. Let's see, where is this? This came to me from Marcia Benno, the town assessor. Marcia is responsible for, you have a general understanding of the town assessor, and Marcia is responsible for taking in the PA 490 applications. So she attended a training not so long ago, and it was, the assessors in Connecticut getting together to take education that they do periodically. You've read most of it by this time. What caught my eye was the last paragraph, because they were talking in this section, maybe that's missing a little context. They were talking to the assessors about classifying land because land has to, in order to get PA 490 treatment by the assessor, the land has to be identified as worthwhile as open space, and the town has to define it that way. So they're talking about classifying land, and the bottom where it's a little awkwardly worded, but what I got out of it is their advice is, the town should avoid classifying acreage or land beyond minimum zoning. Classifying this land doesn't necessarily preserve it, and it's a regressive tax, because the tax break goes to, and what they're communicating goes to people who have excess land, so they have bigger parcels. So the assumption is they have more resources, and therefore you're giving them the capability to get a tax break, and not people who have smaller parcels.
So I think that premise
That
is, I think that premise is incorrect.
I think
Yeah.
that
And
premise is incorrect too.
I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
PA 490 is something that also benefits the town also.
Yes, it does.
And the way it benefits the town is it provides an incentive, or at least not a disincentive for somebody to not develop property. And especially in our town, if somebody were to develop property, it would be most likely for
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah.
And if it's developed for housing, it will cost the town more money in services provided than
Yeah.
the property will provide in tax revenue to the
Yeah.
town.
And-
So they're not taking the full picture they're looking at the revenue side of it, they're not looking at the cost side of it. And that's been the problem in a lot of these discussions in town, is you have to look at what the net value is to the town, whether it's a positive value or a negative value. In
Yeah.
PA 490, it does reduce people's, and some people might never develop the land and they get a
Yeah.
tax benefit,
Yeah.
and they don't really need that incentive. But for people that it does make a difference, it's a benefit to
Yeah.
the town, because it keeps property from being developed in a residential way, which is what would happen in
Yeah.
Woodbridge. It would cost the town more in expenses
Yeah.
than it would generate in revenue. And that little snippet from the
Yeah.
tax assessors only focuses on the revenue side and does not focus on what the net effect to the town would be.
Yeah.
It's not a complete or a well thought out.
Yeah, and it also does not address large undeveloped parcels, which are the ones you do want to give an incentive not to have developed. Which
Yeah,
is the
it's-
main thrust of the PA. What's the main thrust of PA 490?
I mean, to call it a regressive tax,
Yeah.
having it be regressive is kind of a simpleton approach, in that, you know, generating tax revenue is not what the town should be looking at. It should be generating net income, where they develop something that develops more revenue than it develops expenses. And that does not encompass that concept. All it looks at is the revenue side of it. It's kind of disappointing to think that a tax assessor that is responsible for generating the revenue of the town wouldn't think broad enough to think really what is important to the town is the net effect of a parcel and not just the tax revenue. That's my opinion.
There is context that they delivered to them beyond this one slide, so I'll just defend it in that way. The comment seems to me, because they talk about, you know, identifying high impact areas for preservation, and they talk about large tracts of buildable acreage. You know, this, to me, talks about what we were just talking about, where you have already developed land, already has house on it, and there's just some excess acreage. Because that's not gonna be developed in a way that's gonna have large impact on the towns, and they're not the most valuable pieces to preserve, and it can be viewed as regressive, because the only people that take advantage of it are the people who have relatively more.
So the whole thing to
Resource.
say it's
So-
regressive, it sounds like you're saying, or what they're saying is that it's unfair to somebody because somebody gets a benefit. When in reality, the town gets the benefit because something isn't developed. Like, one of the things we looked at in the PA 490 was we looked at a piece of, a lot over on North Peace Road, and my comment was, it's somebody's backyard. I don't think that's something that we should, you know, target as something we would want to acquire. But on the other hand, it was 1.5 acres. And if that land was developed, it would cost the town more money to provide those services than that house that was built on that property would provide in terms of tax revenue. And so, I don't know. I'm not sure where this is
Well,
all
I'm-
going, but,
this came across my desk, I wanted to share it.
okay.
I
I mean, I think
seemed
some
like
of
it
the
was-
criteria that they
okay.
mentioned make sense, but the overall concept is not a complete
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, I think it's just the view that people's backyards aren't, there's a view here that people's backyards, the excess acreage isn't necessarily the thing you want to be classifying as valuable open space. That's the mess, that's,
Again,
from the
PA
street.
490 is to encourage people from developing land and giving them
yeah. Well,
not
and-
creating a disincentive to
Right, and they're
preserve
saying, do
property.
that, identify the high impact areas, and those are really the large tracts and, vacant lots, but don't worry so much about people's backyards, because they're not, that's not the prime open space worth preservation. That's the way I'm reading this.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would probably get a PA 490 reduction in their property taxes if they only had something that was less than a buildable lot. I mean, I guess there was
Well,
one
there's
place
like-
on
no.
Center Road.
Okay, so
But-
maybe we missed the definition. Excess space means space that's beyond the buildable lot, beyond the zoning of the minimum acreage you need to build. So.
Yeah, but if
you have a
it's big enough,
3 acre,
if that
piece of-
excess land is big enough to build something on,
yeah,
then it should qualify for the PA 490 because it's financially in the town's benefit to see that not developed. And so if they can provide an incentive where somebody pays, instead of paying $15,000 in taxes on that piece
Yeah.
of property, they only pay $5,000, but it has zero expense to it. If it gets developed and the revenue becomes $15,000 and the cost to the town for that household is $40,000, it's not a good deal. And it makes sense where it's a lot that could be developed. Doesn't make sense if it's a property that could never be developed because the town doesn't have that trade-off where the expenses are gonna be more than the
Right.
revenue, so.
right. I think that's a consideration. So, we can move on. So we'll go back to, just, again, my thought was to get a little more precise around what we mean by sizable acreage. So when we come to those single-family parcels, we are able to apply a consistent criteria. So we all have a common understanding of what that means, and it's more defensible. Is that reasonable to do?
I think the minimum criteria should be a buildable lot. If it's in different parts of town, if it's 1.5 acres, then it should be something that could be considered. If it's less than 1.5 acres, then it would have to meet some other, some one of the other criteria to be on a list that we would consider preserving it. Just throwing that out as an idea.
Let me, someplace, looks like I closed it. Let me put it here. This is very much just so I wouldn't have to type too many words tonight. My suggestion is to divide this discussion into developed parcels and undeveloped parcels. The guideline might be different. We will find out if it is as we have the discussion. And so the question is, first question is, how many acres of excess land beyond buildable lot size? Knowing that there's gonna be a second piece to this that lists the exceptions, and I put down some of the more common ones. So, can we come up with a number of excess acres that's beyond the zoning requirements? So in some places it's 1.5, or in places it's 2. I think in town there may be other numbers, but that'll suffice. So if beyond whatever the zoning says, how many excess acres, if it's already built, you know, should be a minimum. You know, below that, we wouldn't consider it valuable open space land.
But Tim, if you make that
You know,
part of the criteria, for instance, I'm looking at my pieces that I looked at,
you know,
and honestly, this one, I don't even know how much the acreage is, but it is contiguous with a parcel that's already owned by the Park Association
Association.
or the trust or
Okay.
whatever. So
So-
it
so
could
then-
it could be an acre and 2/3,
Okay.
and you'd wanna add it to that part that they have.
okay.
So you can't.
Perfect, perfect. So that's the second paragraph there, if you will, on the screen. So I was trying to say, this is kind of, if it fits one of these two criterias. So I think there's still maybe a minimum number of acres, but if it fits into one of these criteria, less, so let's just pick a number for this. What number do you want to pick? You know, I'll pick, I don't want to set an expectation here. Let's say this is 100, just because that's ridiculous and we won't use that. But, so if this is 100 acres of excess land, that's the minimum. But then there's going to be times where there are exceptions or special circumstances, and where we'd accept a lesser number of acres, maybe as little as one. maybe
Like or even less, like the movie theater lots.
Okay, let me,
Right.
can you table that for a minute? Because I thought of that, and I'll tell you how I may address that.
But
So
Tim-
Barbara, this is your example. So there'd be a different minimum for space that's contiguous to recognized open land. So we may want to set this at 1 acre, or half an acre, or 2 acres. We'll have that discussion. So if it has farmland, important farmland soils, you know, we got that map I sent out. It tells you where all the farmland soils are in town. If it's there and it's farmland soils, you may want to say then acres less than the first minimum would apply. If it has significant wetlands, if it has historic structures, if it has identified or threatened species habitat, maybe then you don't apply the first criteria for developed parcels, you apply the second one.
So if a piece of
that-
property has no redeeming qualities other than its size and its land,
Right,
then
Or-
I
yeah.
would suggest that it would be a buildable lot. But say, for instance, in the movie theater lot, the movie theater property that we recommended a few months ago the town buy,
yeah,
it was surrounded by other town-owned property, it was
Right.
within wetlands, and there were some other areas. So, you know, and I guess actually technically it was a buildable lot. But I think as a minimum criteria, you'd want it to be a buildable lot if it had no other redeeming qualities.
okay. So Paul, your example is using an undeveloped piece of land, right? And that's going to be our second discussion. And, you know, I agree, we should, knowing that example, and I hope during our discussions, we'll come up with other examples and modify this.
Tim?
But to jump ahead, and I want to go back to develop, but, you know, I put in unconsolidated former subdivision lots as an exception. That should address that case where we could cobble them together, and when cobbled together, they make a meaningful piece of open space that should be preserved. So that, you know, I think we can address that. But, Barbara, or Sharon, rather?
Somehow this kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, and I'm not quite sure why, but I would think that we'd take each plot and kind of discuss it on its own merit. Is it buildable? Does it have
Yeah.
wetlands? And then maybe highlight 10 of those that we really want to make sure are not developed, rather than kind of minimizing all the ones except for the really special ones. Because I just think mentally it diminishes the fact that we really do want to conserve as much land as we can. And each thing might have this or may have that, and I don't kind of like to hear Barbara go through hers, partly so we can get through some, but also so that we can see how much it's, like, just how we feel about it and how much it fits that criteria and how much it's because it's large. Because I think it's artificially imposing something, but
Yeah, it is.
it's not artificially, it's creating a criteria that sounds rational but doesn't necessarily seem applicable in
Right,
practice.
well, okay, so, oh,
But
at
I'd
the
like
risk,
to try it.
at the risk of repeating,
But wait,
this,
Tim, why can't we
let-
try it and see let's try
Well,
it with some of
be-
Barbara's, go both ways.
you know,
And see what works.
Last meeting, we went through a lot of properties.
Okay,
And,
great.
And when we got to the ones that were developed properties that had some amount of excess land, we were all over the board and saying, this should be preserved, no, this one shouldn't. And there was no rationale for that. And
Got uncomfortable
again,
with it.
I think we should
understand.
have a rationale in
Okay,
order
well,
to
let's
say,
do Barbara's with this context, and then maybe if it doesn't work, go back and do it with the previous context.
but
I'm
we
not.
don't have a context. We, you know, because
Well, you have
I don't
proposed
know
one.
what, we don't know what does sizable mean? You know,
Well, I
define-
think
we-
Paul
we
said it.
sort of-
Sizable means enough to build something on it that would cost the town money. Why can't that be the criteria for sizable? Or do you want to say it's
the-
4
the-
houses that could be
Well,
built on
I
it?
mean, if the commission thinks that the criteria should be the excess acreage should be, the size, anything equal to or greater than the zoning acreage for that lot, then, you know, that could be one way to approach it.
Okay, that's what
um,
Paul's proposed, really.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was one property on Center Road that was smaller than what a lot could be, which is curious of why it was ever in that category. There was another property on North Pease Road that I think, I might even have said, it seems like somebody's backyard type of thing. It's not worth being a priority for us. But if somebody were to give us that property, you know, we would take it, but I
Yeah,
don't,
you would take
I
it.
think our goal should be to prioritize what we would want to be able to put a conservation easement on it, or to purchase at some point to ensure that it's open space, not necessarily to discount anything that's not high on that list. So all these properties that are on the list are worth keeping as open space, but not they don't necessarily rise to the priority of being something that we're going to spend a lot of time in trying to write a grant application or buy an easement on or something else.
Well, I think it's to figure out what should be on the list of properties worthy to be preserved open space that we're working on still. On the PA 490 specifically, and those are just about all developed. I guess they have, they're, let me take that back. A good number of them are developed, and those are the ones that we tripped on last time, I thought. And I think we, you know, whatever our criteria is, we should have that, because in that criteria is gonna, it's a criteria that people will use, once it gets approved. And
No, I hear what you're saying. There were some
That
properties
they're
we
gonna-
looked at, we
people are
said
gonna
they were
go
80
use that.
acres, it's a no-brainer. There were other properties we said was an acre and a half, and that was also a no-brainer, but in the other direction. Not,
Yeah.
you know, the large piece of property, or it had specific features that made it something that we would absolutely want to see and be a priority for us to try to preserve. And then there were pieces of property that seemed like part of somebody's backyard. It wasn't that big. It didn't seem like that would be something that we
Yeah.
would spend energy on it. So
Yeah.
maybe this list
So-
should be looked at more of as a prioritized list. And there might be something on the bottom of the list that we would pursue at some point in the future, but it's not where we're going to put our energy to try to preserve at this point.
Well, we're not trying to preserve any of these, we're not trying to take any actions to preserve any of these properties right now. We're just saying, what are the ones worthy of preservation? And we sort of said we can identify a set of properties as we go through this to keep our eye on. But what makes it go on that list? And what makes it, someone's backyard worthy of saying it should be on the
Well, I've clearly
prioritized
heard Paul
properties worthy
say
of preservation.
that if it can be a buildable lot, it
Yeah.
may be worthy. So
Okay.
should we vote on that as a
Well,
possibility? Or do you
um,
not like that criteria?
Well, no, I think approaching it that way is fine, and other towns have approached it that way.
So
what I-
why
what
are
I-
we
what-
not
what I-
keeping discussing it? Why don't we,
Well,
no one has come up with another idea? I mean, it seems
I-
like what,
I think we want to have the discussion, make sure everybody's on board and understands before we.
Well, what do you
go.
suggest, Tim?
I-
What's your idea?
Well, you have a choice. You can pick a number, or you can use some factor of, as other, the one example I've seen, so it's only one data point from another town, they use the factor along the lines of what you were suggesting of, excess of buildable lots. And in their case, I'd have to go back and look at it, they used, I believe, 2 times the buildable area. They were using multiples of, just to try to get it to significant acreage,
I mean, a lot of towns don't have acre and a half or 2 acre lot requirements, so
Yeah,
2 times could have been
This
less
would-
than a half acre.
yeah, and I can't say I have any idea what their.
What town was it?
It's Bridgewater,
Bridgewater, okay.
which would, I think, be somewhat equivalent town in terms of its ruralness to ours. It's probably a little more rural, I think, but I don't think it has the flats, for instance, type of development, but, they had a multiple. So I don't wanna project, I'm just trying to get the commission to think about it, and because again, I think we're all gonna be subject to saying, that we applied a rational thought process. You may disagree with what we applied, but we applied it consistently, and I just wanna make sure we do that, cause, we'll just face challenges. So,
I would suggest we use the buildable lot size criteria,
yeah,
because otherwise there's it's not gonna be developed anyway, so
well, that's sort of the point, a lot of these won't be developed anyway, so, so, why
is
is
there a
it?
problem having more on the list than less? I mean, do we only have to have 10? Why can't we have 30 or 40? Is that a
well,
goal of yours, is to have less on
I-
there? I mean, I guess I'm not clear about that.
I'm not sure I can defend this, but I don't think we should have multiple hundreds of pieces of multiple hundreds of parcels. And, I think there's
Only
not
50
trying
or-
to get to a number, but I don't think it should cover most of the town, because.
How many-
Or most, in terms of, and let's just say for developed properties.
So, there weren't that many on the list to begin with, there were only about 80 or 90 on the
Yeah.
list, right?
But then we have the list from the previous open space plans that we considered the greenway parcels.
Are they different
We're
parcels?
gonna have town-owned parcels, so when we put it all together, there's gonna be a good number of them. So
I'd
so
rather
that's
see them
all, I don't have a
yeah.
certain number in mind, certainly.
I guess I don't have a problem with there being lots on the list, because it's, we wanna preserve land,
You can always
Yeah,
take it
yeah.
off,
right?
but if you have it
Well,
off to
I mean,
begin
one
with, then you
suggestion-
can't
10 years.
put it back on.
In
I
10
mean,
years,
do
we
anybody,
can.
Valerie or anybody else have a feeling about that? I mean, does it seem
Yeah.
like we're doing nothing worthwhile because we're put so many on and we aren't being discriminating enough? Or is it
Yeah.
that we
Well, that-
believe that the land is valuable and we want to preserve as much as
I like
possible?
the words you just used. I think we should be discriminating to say these are the really ones worth preserving. They're special, that they've got real value. I think, and so, and we want to be able to identify the value. when
So
we have
maybe
that
one
discussion.
approach
me,
would be just, categorize them in A properties, B properties, and C properties. The As are the
No.
ones that are most, should be our highest priorities. The Bs are, certainly of interest, and C is of less interest.
Well, and I think we sort of started down that line, properties worth preserving are A's. And then we said we would have properties of continuing interest. And that was, I guess, B's. We didn't go to C's yet, but I mean, at that point, I mean,
So- I don't know if this matters, but we only have like 15, 18 minutes to do any. So maybe the criteria is important to spend the whole time on. I'm
Yep.
kind of curious about hearing those properties and even having something to discuss that we can figure it out a little bit with. What do you think, Paul? I mean, Tim.
Well, I want to be able to, if we get to the criteria, then we can apply it when we go through Barbers, rather than going back through them, but,
Well, how about for the process of discussion, let's make it a buildable lot as the criteria and let's just try it. I mean, does that feel like,
Yeah, I feel like I need an example, just to see
yeah.
how that would play out.
So really, let's just use the second one. Maybe I confused things by putting two feasibility. For purposes tonight, we'll say a buildable lot is
An acre and a half.
the zoning requirement for a minimum lot. I think there's another understanding of buildable lot within,
And there's exceptions too.
yes, so I'll change that but for our purposes, we know it means whatever zoning requires as a minimum acreage. Okay, and then we have some exceptions, and those exceptions, I think, we've been on our list before, and I think we can add to that. All right, so let's go through Barbers quickly.
Okay, the first one is 19 Newton Road. It certainly fulfills our criteria of more than a buildable lot.
SS acreage, yeah.
I said definitely it should be on our list because it is located between the high school and other preserved property. With the house
Do we
kind
have
of
a
stuck
map
in the
of
middle.
where we
middle
can
of it.
see it?
Something happened to my drop-down list. Let me see if I can fix that. So Barbara, I'm sorry, get yours up here again. So Barbara, the key reason to include would be, there's still something wrong with that list.
You had it before, I think.
Yeah,
19 Newton Road is right up.
no, I have 19 Newton Road, but my list of key reasons to include seems to,
We can type it in maybe.
I'm not getting them all on here. So I have to,
Should we just write notes and you can do it on it later?
Yeah. we
So
hope we-
19 Newton.
We pick out of, at least out of the list, so.
So the criteria is excess acreage?
That's not a criteria.
Well,
It's adjacent to other open space, I
It's
think.
adjacent to other open space, it's,
What-
and adjacent to town-owned property.
And it's larger than a
It's
buildable lot.
larger than a buildable lot.
Let me try to fix this list, because some of the reasons you're saying aren't on the list, so. Give me a second. Hmm. All right. I'll fix this more later. All right. So Barbara, let's see. So these were the ones up here are reasons we've been using. No, sorry, something's, I will erase this validation, it's not working correctly, so, and then we'll just type it in and then I'll address it later, so let me,
Is there a lot of wetlands on that property too, Barbara?
there's wetlands on the high school
it-
property.
Yeah, I'm
not
just
sure
looking at a
which
map,
part-
it looks
Yeah,
like it could be.
Is
there
it
are a lot of
where-
wetlands.
Where is it relative to the high school?
It's
I could
towards Center Road from the park, what I consider the parking lot, right out in front.
Yeah, that's all wetlands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And it's,
like across the street from your house, just
Kind
go
of
through
back,
there.
yeah. there's
it's
all,
over, yeah,
Yes.
right near
I mean-
that little development of the
there's-
long
yeah.
road.
No, that's,
And it's part, and well, not,
I don't think
This
it's even
particular
an
piece of-
issue. I don't think we should belabor it, because if that's where you're talking about, it's where, on the other side, closer to high school from my house, there's a pond and all the
Mhm.
skunk cabbage all on that
Mhm,
road, and
mhm.
it's,
that,
Very
And all those
that's
houses.
not it.
so,
18,
if you scale down, you'll be
I
able
don't
to
think
pick
it
it
could be
out.
developed anyway, but, you know,
No.
it's,
okay.
I mean, who knows if they wanna expand the high school parking lot or something like that too.
well, that's what I thought about, you know. Amity just deciding they need more parking and they just,
So are we talking about right here, this place, this part right here,
This parcel, yes, in the red.
in the red?
This rectangle.
Oh,
So the green part is wetlands, right?
Greenland, that's wetlands,
this is a
and,
waterway right here, isn't it? That's
and that's elevation, so it's fairly flat.
yeah, I think that there's.
So, the,
I mean, given that there's wetlands, it's probably, well, part of it's not buildable for
But
sure.
then again, you know, Amity purchase it and they fill it in with
Mhm.
gravel and make, as you say, more parking.
Right, I think it's a,
And it does border on, some town-owned property and it borders on some,
wetlands.
trust or park, yeah.
well,
Oh yeah, this is land trust right here, right?
Yep.
North Center Road,
well, it has houses next to it on the right, has the high school here. This parcel is the town of Woodbridge, it's 0.75 acres. This parcel is a person with a house. This parcel is the town of Woodbridge, 1.95 acres. And that has all the driveways in it. We'll take off the map, the wetlands for a second. Okay.
There's a trust
And
Piece
then
down
the
there.
trust piece is further down.
is next to the, well, this,
This is the land
This,
trust
this
piece
is the
right
trust
here.
piece in here, right? Oops,
This is,
assumption,
this
this
is,
one. Yeah, there you go.
so
Yeah,
it,
it's not immediately adjacent, it has,
no, there are 2 points of it that go down to the trust, according to this.
where's that?
With, I
but
guess,
is
a house and
it,
a
do we
new-
have enough to decide that it, even no matter with other things, it's abuts town land, it abuts, that it should be on the list? What do you think, Tim?
Well, abutting town land hasn't been criteria. We've had, you know, we said
Well,
that
wetlands, is wetlands a criteria?
You know, significant wetlands,
It has
important
significant
wetlands.
wetlands.
You know, and we said if it's adjacent to recognized open space, other open space.
And it,
Uh-huh.
and the acreage is plenty large, plenty,
Well, for the criteria we just developed.
yes, well,
Okay, so
So,
can we go
but-
on?
And
Move
what
on?
the key reason for preservation, I'm gonna type it in and then,
Wetlands,
is it wetlands, that's the key?
and near, other, what did you guys say? Other town land?
Mm-hmm.
Don't like that, I think that's,
Well, that hasn't been a criteria that it's down there. It's adjacent to
but it's,
recognized,
well,
other
other open
recognized open
space, it's
space.
adjacent, it's close to
Yeah.
other open space.
Yeah. And when we put that list together, we said significant, it's a pretty small
and-
piece, but
And enough acreage, right? That's the other piece,
it's
so it-
3, over 3 acres.
yeah. So, okay, so wetlands is, we just need one, I just wanna be able to
Really?
point to,
Okay.
just wanna be able to point, and we've been putting down the key reasons, so wetlands is the primary reason, we think that's worth preserving.
Can I just,
Yep.
but wetlands is only 1/3 of it, and then
Yep.
that still leaves a buildable lot, so they could contest, well, we're protecting the wetlands and there's a buildable lot in the middle between the wetlands and the house that's there. So why wouldn't we put down 2 reasons so that it would cover the whole the criteria,
Part,
the whole parcel as, for rationale? Cause wetlands only only
Well,
that part of it would be
we're-
protected.
We're not trying to build a case against them not developing the land. We're saying that's a land worthy of preservation because it has wetlands on it. You don't have to-
Okay, I just think strengthening of someone not
Yeah,
outthinking that, okay, well, maybe that's enough.
okay.
next parcel,
44 Newton?
44 Newton, it is very, very, very small. It's only .69, and it is actually a tiny farm.
Oh, really? Oh, it's that,
Hmm?
yeah,
It is a tiny little farm.
So
But
it
What's
has
the
only
street
point-
number?
It's, 44.
Okay.
So it has farmland
It's
soils.
the other side of Newton Road,
All right, let me pull that up.
Oh, okay.
right there, that.
Is that-
This being Alice Newton's, this being the piece that we were just
Is,
talking about, or part of that.
Is it that
No,
red
that-
antique house? It's
Yeah.
across from the high school?
It's further up. Go up, go up, go up. Go, there it is, right there.
44. There's buildings scattered all over it.
And it's a little, as I say, it
Well,
is
those are
actually
chicken
a
coops, those
little
are
farm.
farms. Those are farm buildings.
Are they farm buildings?
Yeah,
Mhm. I don't think all of them are still there
but the open space part of it is only 0.7 acres, not even.
Well, if we wanna fit our criteria though, it has farmland soils.
Does it? We'd have to,
I don't know.
we'd
I
have to
mean,
examine the map.
So-
Barbara, what was your conclusion on
I
this
had
one?
said, I had said no, because it was in the middle of nowhere and it was too small.
okay.
I mean,
It
I
is
think-
unlikely to be built
I think
on.
a size lot that small is, I would agree with that,
yeah,
because it's
got-
just so
at the
small.
bottom, it's number C,
Right, it's a C for sure.
if you wanna keep them all on, which it's my feeling you should.
Okay, so the next one is,
The next one
49.
is, number 49, it's across the street again, it is,
Where is it?
it's 4.7
47.
acres, and it is contiguous with Park Association land.
where's,
And it is the
Where-
other
oh, here
side
it
of
is.
Amity.
Oh, this is, yeah, this is a,
is it unbuilt on?
yeah, this is unbuilt above.
It,
This
it
is,
has no building on it, no.
this is
It has a
all
lot-
wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Virtually all.
Well, that's easy.
All right, so,
Important
Um,
wetlands.
Is that in back of Peck's farm?
Yeah, I think it is in back of Peck's. And why they don't own it, I don't know.
wetlands.
Good, because it's wetlands, they probably don't want it.
They don't exist anymore.
All right.
They didn't own it. The next one is way up across the street from Spoke Drive. It's 183 Newton. It is a fairly large parcel, 5.4 acres, but it is all by itself. And I don't know about the wetlands, I did not check on that.
Wetlands kind of run through the middle here,
183 here.
183, yeah.
183,
Is
right?
that that log? No.
So it's actually
Did
not
we, did,
that big.
let me interrupt. Did we ever get, someone was gonna take back and ask about wetlands and ability to build?
There's a 100-foot review area.
Yeah, you can't
You can't build on
on
wetlands.
wetlands.
You can build
You have to
within,
be what?
How much setback?
How far, the setback?
doesn't mean that you can't encroach some if you petition, but it's frowned upon, so I don't know with that scale where 100 feet comes, but it definitely limits it being behind.
1 inch equal 100 feet.
What?
1 inch equals 100 feet.
1 inch, so,
That's the scale, so,
so this doesn't look very buildable here and behind at least.
yeah. And on the other side,
Plus, you have to see where their house already is.
yeah,
So they would have to,
they would have to subdivide
they would
that.
have to take
have
their
to-
house,
Yeah.
It looks
take it out and
unsubdividable.
build it
It's un-
someplace
yeah, it's
else
un-
to subdivide that.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
gonna do that. Cause their house is literally in the middle of that lot that is buildable. Cause the wetlands are not buildable. So
Yeah,
it's
so I
kind
think
of
it effectively makes it not,
unusable, unbuildable, yeah, or undevelopable, develop, I can't even say it, it's too late. My mouth is tripping.
Oh,
You'd have
Is that-
one
it's
behind
9:30.
it,
Is
Yeah.
that,
behind
Oh.
the wetlands.
Yeah, I was gonna
You
finish
go
this
to
one and
the other
ask
side maybe,
the
yeah.
consensus here.
is that Spoke right, where is Spoke, right near the
Spoke
green?
is across, see, it's just up
Up
there
there.
a little tiny
There.
bit and across.
Up here,
That's
Val,
Spoke.
can you see it up on top?
Where his
Oh, that-
arrow is. That's Spoke.
Oh, okay.
Is there room behind the wetlands to,
No.
there's not enough room?
No.
I don't know, I
What-
can't tell.
Is that wetlands or a river? There's a pond there.
Well, wetlands could be a stream and then
Right.
it's boggy, you know, like a boggy kind of wet area.
It's a
But-
little tough.
But no, there's a real, Barbara, is that where the pond is? Near Spoke?
There's some,
There's a,
type of-
like a lake there.
yeah,
Really?
Or-
I've never come to understand these
really-
ground lines completely, but I think those are indicative of wetlands also, but,
Where is 67 on here? Route 60?
Way up,
Where,
further
I don't-
down.
Oh, okay.
North of there.
You're
Well,
only
up
like-
Where
above.
are we? I can't
You're
see.
only, you're not at, yeah, so it's further down beyond that,
Oh, okay.
you know? So there's, yeah, see, there it is,
there's 67,
crosses over.
and we're talking about.
Is that the big
Oh, that's
lake?
where, that's where the lake, that's where the water is, right.
No. No, the lake is over.
The lake is on
farther
the
Lake
other
over.
is-
side.
The lake is on the other side there.
This might be the lake
Where-
right there.
Where are you?
See that,
Is that the lake? No,
That-
I don't know
I
what,
don't think the,
It's
I
off
I
think
don't
the
know what the
60s
lake is
it's
that
off
you're
the
The
talking
lake
about.
is
67.
even
it's,
beyond
you
there.
can see it, it's right on 67 basically. There it
Yeah,
is,
there.
see that?
No.
That's it, I think.
No, okay.
It's
Is that the
near-
association you're talking
It's
about?
off of Rock Hill, and Spoke is around the corner.
This is Rock Hill,
Where
There it is, see, that's the whole lake.
this is Rock Hill.
Right.
No, I
Um,
think that's wetlands. That's
That's
not a lake.
wetlands, but if I take that off,
Let's see.
I used to be able to see it. I think this might be the lake.
Yeah, that might be the lake.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
because
right
it's
behind-
Maple Vale is
Yeah,
right there.
Maple Vale.
Yeah.
And then
There's another
there's another
pond.
something.
Yeah,
So,
right
but
behind
that's
Dickinson's, yeah,
that's somebody's property. What is that?
yeah, that's,
Oh,
Yeah, that's that farmhouse right on that corner.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
Okay,
so
thank
what's our conclusion on this?
I don't think, I think it preserves itself.
Yeah, okay, I think, all right. So, we've come to 9:30.
Mhm.
We just got partway through Barbara's items. Interest in pushing on to finish Barbara's, or just we'll continue next time?
Continue next time.
Yep, yeah, okay. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn then? So moved by Joy?
Seconded.
I need a second,
I seconded.
and we will be adjourned till our November meeting. Thank you all
And the
very much.
November meeting is the
Thank
week
you.
before Thanksgiving.
It's before.